Hi, Nicole. It's good to be back with you for
Yeah.
this interview. So thanks for taking the time. What I want to focus on in this interview is the idea of true independence and what's your understanding of what it means to be a truly independent social worker. So to start off with, then you've been working with social workers for quite some time, and what sort of things are you seeing happening in the world of independent social work that you'd like to change?
Yeah, well, I want to answer that in two parts because I love the first thing that you said around like true independence. First and foremost, this is something that I find social workers are not really aware of. True independence is not somebody else finding work for you and paying you. And you giving them an invoice and they pay you, and they're telling you where to show up, when to show up, and how to show up, and giving you your time scales. Independence is not you just somebody coming to you and saying, I'd like you to do a report, and you go out and do it, and that's it. Independence is really truly about knowing who you serve and why you serve them. And when I say knowing who you serve, like having a very deep understanding about what makes them tick. What are the nuances of the difficulties and the struggles that they have? What things do they enjoy? Do they like? What do they gravitate to? Really having a clear understanding on who your avatar is, right? And then you're also understanding what their needs are and what their wants are, because those are two different things. Knowing and how to market yourself. So you actually go out and market yourself. You network. You might have a member of staff. You will actually be the one to determine your own prices. So you have a very clear pricing structure that you apply different formulas to different products and services, and that you actually know and go out and negotiate, and you pitch, and you acquire work, and you market yourself in various places. That's true independence from a business point of view. The second part of true independence is actually understanding that you're in this to serve. So most social workers, as I think I've said before, when we've spoken, they think that independence is, I'm fed up of local authority, so I think I'm just going to go out and do some assessments, and now I'm independent. Like, that has nothing to do with independence, because you can go out and stack shelves in Tesco and be getting an income, right? Independent social work is about being independent of the local authorities and the institutions that our clients do not like, for the most part, okay, or have struggles with. And we fill the gap. We fill the gap that they're not able to fill by the virtue of how they're structured. And so we're able to support them in their work because they do great work, and we're able to meet the client's needs, and the client knows that we are fully independent. And so that's really what true independence is. It's serving, but serving from a standpoint of, I am a separate entity that people can see in their own right, and that I am value to any of those entities for various reasons, but I stand alone.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. You asked me that the second thing was, what would I like to see change, right? So here are some things that I would like to see change. I would like to see social workers shift their mindset. I want to see that they've been more willing to step outside of working in a way that does not really suit them. Because a lot of social workers, they go independent. I know social workers who have opened up residential units, assessment units, and have closed them down and have gone not even to agency work, because now we have IR35. They've gone to permanent work. So they've just jumped from the frying pan right into the fire. And it makes me sad when I see that, because I know the potential, I know what they're able to do. And I think the second thing that I like to see change that follows on from that is them taking a chance on themselves, on other people. I think we get caught up in the big institutions within social work, whatever country we're in, who have monopolized on social work and being the go-to people for social work. And it almost can seem as though, well, nobody else has anything of value to offer outside of those institutions, which isn't true. Actually, people on the front line that are still in touch Frontline and other social workers, and actually doing it out there and making a success of it and doing it in a very different way, have a lot to offer. And so I think taking a chance on themselves to do things in a different way and taking a chance on other people that can help them is important. But it all stems down to mindset.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's a couple of things come to mind from what you say. The first is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds as though you're saying, in a sense, part of what people need to do to be truly independent is to use their assessment skills, in the sense of assessing themselves, their circumstances, what they want, what they have to offer, how they can achieve it, and so on. So they're using those like analytical skills to form a picture of what are the issues right now and where do we want to go with this, which to my mind is what a good assessment should do in those circumstances, rather than just fill in a form, ticking boxes and so on, to have that sort of holistic, analytical understanding of what's the situation now, what situation do we want to be in, how do we get from where we are now to where we want to be. Is that a fair reflection? Yeah,
it is. And I think oftentimes social workers struggle to do that, which is very surprising. And I think, it's because they're oftentimes in the heat of the moment and they're overwhelmed, and you get paralysis when you're overwhelmed. And so the process that I take them on is the time to reflect and really think about that. And they realize, and they say, oh yeah, there is that. And yeah, I would like to. And yeah, I am good at this. And so, yeah, it is. And it's matching those skills, knowledge, experience to what is the gap then, and how does that apply? And being honest about where the deficit is as well, and saying, well, okay, I can't fulfill that bit, so maybe I'm going to go and learn it, or I'm going to partner with somebody who does know it and become a stronger force to deliver this. But yeah, that definitely, I think that's a great summing up.
Yeah, and I mean, what you're saying fits in with my view about reflective practice. I mean, as a lot of people will be aware, I'm a big fan of reflective practice. I think it's really important. But one thing I'm constantly challenging is people tell me I'm too busy to reflect. And what I have to do is to respond to that, to say, no, sorry, that's a misunderstanding of reflective practice. The busier you are, the more reflective you need to be. Absolutely. The more pressure you're under, the more you need to be thinking, planning, analysing, making sense of the situation and dealing with it as best you can, using your knowledge, your skills, your values, and so on. So it's a mistake to think I'm too busy to reflect. It's the other way around.
It's dangerous.
Yeah,
I think it's really dangerous, because we're making some crucial decisions about people's lives, and we're working and putting ourselves in quite vulnerable situations. And if we are not doing that reflection, we have to question the quality of the work that we're actually putting out there. In honesty, and that's a worry. That's a real worry. So and that's part of why I've created like product services. And I reflect myself, even as an independent. I see the importance of reflecting on my own work that I'm doing, and I'm not on the front line. So I definitely think it's something that needs to be happening. And I love that social workers are finding my products useful in that process.
Yeah, and that's great. Yeah, and the other thing that came out of what you said as well, that reminds me of my own experience, if I can just explain that briefly. Some years ago, I had my annual meeting with my accountant, and she's always been very helpful and been very grateful to her. And during this particular meeting, she said to me, Neil, you have to make a decision as to whether you're self-employed or you're running a business. And I rather naively said, well, aren't they the same thing? And she said, no, they're not the same thing. If you're self-employed, you're just basically doing what you used to do as an employee, except you send out invoices instead of receiving a salary. And the example she used was a plumber. She said, you may work for a plumbing company and get a salary, then you decide to go independent. You become self-employed, so you provide plumbing services directly to individuals and families and send them invoices. But you're basically doing what you did before. You're employing yourself rather than being employed. She said, whereas if you're in business, which I think is more like what you're talking about in terms of being truly independent, then you make decisions about what you're going to do. You may offer new services. You may offer your services to a different market, to a different group of people. You can go in whatever direction you choose, whereas if you're just self-employed, then you're just sticking with what you've got. And the thought of doing that for 10, 20, 30 years, of just more of the same is not very exciting, not very appealing. Whereas the idea of thinking, I run my own business, I am truly independent, I can take my work in whatever reasonable direction I want to, is very empowering and very motivating for us. Does that fit with what you were saying, or have I got the wrong end?
Yeah. I absolutely 100% agree with that and endorse that. And actually, I take it a stage further in terms of this is kind of the thing that I do talk to my students about, my mentees about when I'm mentoring them one-to-one, and even in the program that I have, the Social Work Social Freedom program, we cover things like that, where it is really, you've got to understand business development. Like, you can't stay stagnant. And when I talk to social workers about the fact I choose what location I want to work in, like I have a business model for my business, and I've thought about that very strategically. So I can go off to Malaysia and spend a month. I can go to Trinidad and be there for a few weeks and extend my trip if I want to. I can go here, that I can decide I'm going to go to a coffee shop today to work, or meet up with a friend, or decide indeed I don't fancy doing any work today, I'll pick it up tomorrow, so long as I haven't obviously got a client. Those are the kind of things that I'm teaching them and sharing with them, so that they understand you are running a business. And I think that's the biggest misconception, even for semi-independents. I think they feel very, very comfortable, and they feel as though I'm independent, and they play it safe, and they're quite happy because they're just getting money coming in, and that's all it's about, as opposed to thinking, actually, I've got a wider purpose here. There is more that I can attain in terms of flexibility, income, and being more creative and revolutionizing different areas of the industry in which I particularly have a focus in. So if you're lecturing, for example, you can revolutionize the way lecturing is done, by virtue of how you show up and how you deliver it and what services and products you provide. And, but I get a sense that there isn't an interest sometimes or desire for that level of fluidity or creativity, which is a shame. I think that is another thing that I'd like to see change in social work, actually independent social work. I would really like to see, social workers be willing to be really creative and bold and get out there and do some amazing things.
Yeah, okay, that's helpful. What do you see in terms of the future of independent social work? How do you see that working out?
I think the future of independence can be very bright. I'm doing a lot of connections with people internationally around independence. I want it to spread like wildfire, and I'm doing some particular work with a professor in Africa around that, and I'm really excited about what we have on the horizon. And I'm excited about the things that I have on the horizon as it pertains to independent social work and moving things forward. I think that there's definitely more scope. I think that there's a lot of talks and rumblings about privatisation, about child protection services here in the UK, in different local authorities. And I know some have actually been taken over and privatised. And I think there are worries around that for me. And I think for other social workers, from what I hear, and I think that it lends itself and it enables us to think actually more broadly about what we're able to do as independent social workers. But I think it's about us being brave enough to take ownership of our profession and be proud of our profession, to say, we've got all these skills and experiences. We're not just going to abandon it and abandon the people that we want to serve. We're actually going to take the bull by the horns and take some ownership and come together and do something different. And that's what I'd really like to see. I'd really like to see social workers within independence take the bull by the horns and say, this is our profession and we're going to help shape it, and we're doing that through independence.
Yeah, and it helps to strengthen the profession then and to reaffirm its value, which is no bad thing, of course. Yeah. Okay, thanks. That's helpful. Now, in your work in terms of both doing and promoting and supporting independent social work, do you draw on any particular frameworks or theories to help you? Yeah,
I mean, empowerment is a huge one. Empowerment. I also really gravitate, well, I'll talk a little bit about empowerment first. The reason why is because I think social workers are really, oftentimes they speak to me, they talk about feeling very de-skilled, they feel very unmotivated, they don't feel supported. I'm hearing a lot of social workers saying that they're not really feeling supported. And so this empowerment is really important for me to reaffirm for them the skills that they have, their capabilities, the work that they're actually doing. You know, we just go like a bit of a pay train and we're on autopilot, and we forget, as we've spoken earlier, about the reflection, and we often don't reflect on the good work that we've actually done. We're so focused on what we haven't done and what we're missing in our practice that it null and voids all the amazing stuff that we are actually doing. So I do a lot of empowerment, a lot of affirmation and reaffirming and supporting, and what's the word that I'm looking for? It's the validating for them, and that really assists them and recapturing the essence of their role. So that's definitely a framework. I also really am hot on systemic. So I'm a systemic practitioner as well. And so I'm very much into the second order cybernetics of understanding I'm part of the process. I've interrupted a negative pattern for them. And so that's why I like giving them little challenges and action points to do even in our first meeting, and follow up with them, because it immediately sets the precedence and the trajectory of what I want them to go on, which is they're sitting there doing some thinking, but they're actually taking action. So they've learned something new in our session from the get-go about what they can do, how they can do differently. Now, I don't just want them to sit on that, I want them to take action. And whether that takes action in them remaining in local authority and moving up the ladder, or stepping sideways into the voluntary or private sector, or exiting social work, or going independent, it doesn't matter. I always say to them, I want them to make a decision. The right decision has to be made, but a decision has to be made. And so those are the kind of key things that I'm looking at when I'm thinking about frameworks, theories. And of course, there's always things around gender, because some of my mentees are men, white men, for example, and I'm a Black woman. So I'm thinking about all those kind of racial differences, especially in this time, cultural differences as well. I have people that are from Spain. I have clients that are in Africa. So I have clients in Swaziland, several in South Africa, Nigeria, Canada, different states in the USA, and here all over the UK and Ireland. And so I'm always mindful of the different cultural differences, and I guess thinking about people's journey, their attachment styles. I love attachment. I absolutely love Patricia Crittenden's DMM and how she's developed attachment and understanding it. I've done a lot of my own attachment work, even on this journey of independence. And so I think about that a lot in my work, and understanding the behaviours that social workers come to me with, and the actions that they take or don't take, and helping them to understand where that's coming from also. So yeah, those are some of the key theories and frameworks that I use.
Yeah, that's great. Really, really interesting. Now, something else that interests me is that clearly you have got a great deal to offer independent social workers, or people considering or in the process of becoming independent. You're a great resource for them. But what would you say is the one single thing you would want social workers to know about independence?
It's not as scary as it seems. And if you have somebody like me who can give you a blueprint, then there's nothing to be scared of. You have everything to gain and nothing to lose. When I, was getting into independence, like I said, I didn't really think, Neil, about what on earth independence was going to look like much for me until I went on holiday. And that was after I handed in my notice. I really hadn't done the thinking. It was while I was on the beach, I was doing all this thinking, and I'm very strategic and plan and create. So when I'm in that mode and I'm getting all this inspiration, like I'm writing it down, and I can create like a whole thing, which is what I did. And so I would say that if I'm able to do it without even knowing what a tax return was, without knowing or understanding marketing and how you did that, and you know, just the basic things, some of the elementary things that now are like secondhand to me, like I didn't have a clue about it. I had no clue about business, and I've been able to do it. 6 years, I'm still here. I've generated, you know, 6 figures into my business, and that is huge when I think about the fact it's come, all of that generation has come from thinking, strategizing, planning, having ideas about what do people need, how can I package it, creating it, writing it down, creating it, and then thinking, how do I go and deliver this? And then knowing where my deficits were, I knew what I needed to learn. And some of it I didn't even know, because you don't know what you don't know. So a lot of when I went out to learn, okay, I need to know, how do I sell this? A whole world opened up to me, and I was like, oh my God, I've got all this to learn. And then I'd go somewhere else and learn about sales. And oh my God, now there's all this to learn. And then go into a website, because my first website, I was really proud of it. And I remember that my boyfriend at the time, I showed him my website, and I was super proud, Neil, of this website. And he looked at it and he said, oh, right, yeah, I can see it needs work. And I looked at him and I was like, oh, this is like an amazing website. And it really was trash when I think about it. When I think back now, it really wasn't saying anything. But, you know, so you learn all these new things and you don't know what you don't know. And so to have somebody that gives you an entire blueprint and telling you everything that you need to know, and giving you the step-by-step of like, don't worry about that bit of the process right now. This is where you need to be. Then you do that in all these different areas. Like, if I had that, I would have paid anything, because I would have saved myself more than half of what I've spent on learning and making the mistakes, and the stress associated with making those mistakes and being unsure of what you're doing has been phenomenal for me on the journey. It has been at times very stressful, very worrying, because like I said, I have no safety net. Like, I have to bring in the income. It's my bread and butter. So yeah, I would, that's what I would say. I would say those things that I would want them to know. Like, it is not as hard as you think when you have a blueprint. It is an easy, it's an enjoyable experience. Come along for the ride. Don't waste any more time. Get on board.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. That sounds great. I certainly wish I'd had your services when I started out all those years ago. Okay, before we draw this to a close, any last minute comments, questions, anything you want to add before we finish?
No, I just want to encourage you to, if you're a social worker thinking about it, I want you to know that becoming independent isn't an overnight job, okay? I think sometimes social workers get worried and they say, oh, I'm not ready to be independent yet. Well, great. So when are you ready? Well, maybe in a year or two. Brilliant. You need to be starting the steps now, because in a year or two, when you get there, you can't say, okay, now I'm ready to be independent. Now I'm going to do it. No, you're going to remain stuck where you are, which is where you don't want to be, but you're not going to be able to move because you've done none of the work that prepares you to be independent. So the journey starts today, from now, whether that's writing a list, whether that's going out and watching a video, whether it's starting to think about who you're going to serve. All of those things are merely small, very small steps in what is a huge amount of work that you need to be doing to become actually independent and get to the stage that Neil and I are at, where that's all we do. Like, that's all we advertise. That's what we get up and do every day with no safety net. So I encourage you, don't delay and wait. If you know that independence is something that you want to start doing, please do connect with me. Let's get you started on the journey. We can think about when is a good time for you to, you know, resign and fire your boss and become independent. You know, that might be a year, it's time, a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years, whatever is suitable, but you want to be taking the steps now. And the longer run of a road you have to create and build your business and build your audience and get your clients together is the greatest. It is going to benefit you. So that's the last thing that I would say. And thank you, Neil, for these interviews. I've enjoyed them. And you can connect with me, everyone. If you're watching this, you can connect with me on all my social media platforms. I'm NicoleMLouis, the Social Worker Strategy Mentor. Thank you, Neil.
That's great, Nicole. That's been really helpful, really enjoyable too. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.